This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Hello and welcome to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with your host, David Charlton. And as I record this podcast, it's a beautiful sunny day. It's perhaps the start of the English summer. I really hope. I would like to think it's probably the warmest day of the year so far. And when this podcast comes out, British Open Golf Championship will be taking place. Hence, why the podcast is about golf in general. What I'm looking to do is educate people, be that golfers in the main, golf coaches, or sport psychologists, about the role of the sport psychologist when working with golfers and what it looks like, challenges that I face, challenges that golfers face, and I'm going to share a case study at the end as well, just to give you a flavour of how I go about things. So personally, I've played the game since I was about 10 years old. That's actually 30 plus years, unfortunately, although I don't look it. Professionally, I've worked with golfers for around about 12 years there now. Worked with players on the PGA Tour, the European Tour, England Internationals, Euro Pro players, Challenge Tour players, down to county level, and even up to the 28 handicapper. So a vast different range. And typical challenges that golfers bring to me is that they hit it well on the range, but they can't do it on the course. Often born out of a lack of trust and perfectionism. Then we've got, they might score well, they'll play well, but they feel they're capable of much more. We've got performance anxiety and getting off to slow starts in rounds, or perhaps struggling if there's crowds there. Maybe they might be a bit yippy as well with their putting, their chipping, or even with the full swing yips. We've got temper tantrums. We've all seen the golfer, haven't we, who likes to smash 2 or 3 different clubs or take it out on their bag or caddy car. So dealing with mistakes, bad bounces, unfair lies, dodgy pin positions, 3 putting, keeping their cool in general. That's another big challenge. And then lastly, I would say number 5 would be the off-course stuff. So especially with professional golfers, it can be quite overwhelming. And especially if you're quite new to a tour or you're new to turning professional and managing your time and everything that goes with that. And then possible off-course distractions, relationship issues, financial worries, things like that. They can play a part in a golfer's form, certainly at a professional level, as well as an elite amateur level as well. So how do I help golfers? Well, firstly, I would say 2 times of the year seem to be very popular with golfers in contacting me. You've got at the very start of the season, or should I say a month, 2 months before the start of the season, when some players are looking ahead. They're quite optimistic about the season, but also a little bit apprehensive, and they want to make the most from their golf. That's one type of player. Then the second type of player, often it's about middle of the season, potentially late in the season, they'll get in touch and they want to try and salvage something. They want to get their confidence back. They want to make some cuts if they're a professional, or maybe they want to finish strongly towards the end of the season as they head into the winter. So I feel in this podcast it is important to let you know about 4 different phases. I'm going to call it in therapy here, but actually it's more about performance coaching. The word therapy can put a lot of sports people off and golfers off. So as I say, we're going to call this the 4 phases of performance coaching, because we're here to help you improve and get better. So number 1 would be orientation. So this is all about building rapport, building relationships, and ideally for me is looking to see you, the golfer, on the golf course. I'll often play around with my clients to start with, or perhaps see them on a practice facility. Okay, fair enough. in today's age now with COVID, things have changed and video calls are more often. I've got more virtual clients around the world. So obviously that is going to be a challenge unless they're willing to travel in an aeroplane or drive a good few hundred miles. That sometimes can be a challenge. But in the main, I do like to see a golfer on the golf course. Worst case scenario, people will send me through some videos, or we might even set a camera up when they're on a practice facility or when they're on the golf course. We might have a conversation. So I want to know what's going on inside their heads. And, in my opinion, I suppose when I look at PGA coaches, I do think they're missing a trick often by not seeing their players on the course. It's much like doing a speech, say for your wedding, for argument's sake, where you might write your speech down and practice it in front of the mirror and then go on to do this speech in front of 100, 200 people. It's a very, very different environment, especially if those people are heckling you and asking questions of you and perhaps playing about with their mobile phones. As you know, the golf course does throw an awful lot at you, whereas the practice facilities, maybe not so much. So it is helpful to see the golfer on the golf course. And during that time as well, as I mentioned, rapport is a big thing. So we'll chat, we'll have a bit of a laugh about certain things. And I'll just try to get to understand you, the person, your life away from the game, your support system, your general background. And it's, nice, pleasant chat. Also, perhaps in this round of golf, we'll look at the second part of the process. We've got identification and figuring out what we need to do to be able to help you. And, in the nicest way possible, I suppose I am a pain in the backside with this. I will ask lots of questions because I am really, really trying to dig deep and understand more about you. And it might be about you as a golfer and your practice schedule, why you play the game, what you enjoy about it, your goals, your challenges, what's stopping you from achieving your goals, any home issues, any off-course distractions, and so on. I'm really trying to figure out the best way that I can help you. And this may take a few hours, in effect. Just meeting somebody and trying to find this information out in 20 minutes and then sending them on their way after an hour, it's unlikely to cut the mustard. So during this round, if we are playing together, I'm trying to piece this information from you. And obviously, if we aren't actually playing a game of golf and we are doing it virtually, then I'll be asking those types of questions virtually via Zoom. So then we have the third phase, and that's about exploration. And it's a working phase, essentially. So, during that time, we're going to be exploring. We're going to try and figure out what it is that's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you. My job's about helping you reach your goals. So it's vitally important that we have a good two-way conversation there. And I understand, as I say, what is not going to work for you. So I don't want to be sending you down rabbit holes and you taking longer to attain your goals than's necessary. And that's often a trap that golfers will fall into, certainly around the technical side of their game. So we'll be trying to keep it simple, certainly keep it as simple as possible. That is so, so important. And I'm going to be checking your understanding of sport psychology, your past experiences, good and bad, through this process, and you being honest with me or the other sport psychologist that you work with is so, so vital, unless it becomes very, very difficult. Then we've got phase 4, and this is resolution, where we say goodbye to each other. So I make myself redundant, essentially. I make sure that you've got the tools that you can take on the golf course to score better, to go around in 62 rather than 65, or if you're a bit yippy, to make sure you've got a smooth, rhythmical putting stroke. So as a little recap, we've got these 4 stages. We've got orientation and building rapport. We've got, secondly, identification and figuring things out together. 3 is exploration and the work phase. And then 4, we've got resolution, saying goodbye, seeing you with a smile on your face and playing some good golf. So now that we've touched on those 4 areas there, I'm going to help you take a step back so you know a little bit more about what you can expect. So this whole orientation and rapport building. So I'm quite personable. I'd like to think I'm fairly relaxed. So, we're going to chat about golf or sport in general. I'm going to try and find out if you're solely focused on your golf or whether you've got other interests. We'll have a little bit of a laugh. It's going to be light-hearted conversation. And if we're honest, if we're more relaxed, it is the best opportunity for you to learn. The identification and the figuring it out. I'm always asking myself the question, is this right for the client? Will this help the client achieve their goals? Will it correlate this tool that I'm about to show them with shooting less shots, lowering their scores on the golf course? And this always has to be something that I go back to. A big part of my role, or the role of a sports psychologist, is reflection. And it's a very, very important process, which incidentally, from my experience, many golfers, athletes, and quite a lot of coaches do struggle with. So it's so important that we do buy into this reflective process. As a sports psychologist, how we go about the reflective process by following specific templates of reflection, which I've talked about in previous podcasts, as well as talking to our peers and receiving supervision. We've got to throw our egos out of the way after all. We've got to look at some hard facts to help the golfer in front of us achieve their goals. And this is an ongoing process from session to session that we've really got to spend some time on. And certainly during sessions on the golf course or on virtual sessions or face-to-face sessions, it is something that I'm going through in my mind on a regular basis. It's something I'm really, really conscious of, is helping my clients. So this third part, the exploration side, where work is ongoing, many golfers will call or email me hoping for a one-off session. They're hoping for that magic pill, me to wave that magic wand and everything will be better. However, I do tell them I'm not that guy. I will send them on their way and perhaps recommend somebody else to help them. The way I see my work is the relationship is so vital. And how we build and then go on to maintain that relationship, it really helps with the exploration process. For you to make relevant changes in your mentality, you have to trust me. So we really have to work on that trust element. So if you're not willing to put the time in to try and get to know me as well, then, it can cause some issues. My style, I will generally guide and we'll work together collaboratively. I will direct if necessary, but in a gentle way, gently challenging you. I believe that everybody does have the answers within them. So I'm going to prod to try and bring those answers out. However, I do have to recognize that this approach does have to be adapted from time to time. Some people come to us when they're completely lost. They're ready to give up. Others have their heads in the clouds. So they need challenging more and they need more direct support. Youngsters perhaps need more direct support as well. They don't have that self-awareness piece, which we're trying to help solve so that they can become better decision makers. So back to this exploration side. The tools I use are evidence-based. And this is going to be very different from the mind coach or the performance coach. Well, I'll be careful on that one. Some will use some evidence-based tools and will be well educated from a variety of different backgrounds. So what do I mean by evidence-based? So for many years, although sports psychology is a relatively new field, we've got health psychology, clinical, counseling, and occupational psychology. There's been a whole host of research, millions of papers out there, often from academics and universities, who may look at how people deal with stress, how they remain present, how to enhance confidence. As I say, there's millions of bits of research out there on a wide range of topics. So this is what we call about evidence base. And the evidence base often comes from different therapeutic approaches. We've got CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. We've got REBT, rational emotive behavioral therapy. Mindfulness, we have ACT, which is acceptance commitment therapy, self-compassionate therapy, solution-focused therapy, and so on. I'm not going to bore you with that any longer. However, as a sports psychologist, it does take 6 to 7 years plus to actually learn your trade. And during that time, during that training, you are learning about these various different techniques. And then afterwards as well, when you do get qualified, you're part of your license with the HCPC. So that's the Healthcare Professions Council, is all about you partaking in regular CPD. And that's the difference between ourselves as sports psychologists and these mind coaches and performance coaches, where a lot of their tools and knowledge will be based on, yes, bits of evidence, but generally a lot of it is based on experience, and they will do a lot more experimental work. So moving on to what my work actually looks like. So firstly, when I meet someone, I'm actually looking to see if they're mentally ready to work with me. I'll be looking at their eyes, the tone of their voice, the level of their commitment I'm going to be checking. And I've got to be honest, some conversations do worry me. My gut feeling will be, I'm not sure if this one is going to work. Or, yeah, this person seems really up for this. And then I'll go on, I'll tell them about how I support people. And generally, my support packages with golfers are anywhere between 4 to 10 hours. And then you've also got incorporating a round of golf, or perhaps, well, more than one round of golf. I think, in all honesty, 6 hours plus gives you the time, gives you the scope to really be able to crack a lot of challenges. But you do find some are more complex. And the golfer who nods their heads and smiles when I tell them this, they sometimes do make me worry. And for me, that is a concern. My job, as I see it, is to help you achieve your goals. And also, I want to go away with a good reputation as well, where you might recommend me to other people. So I want results. That's my job. That's the way I see it. So by not being honest, by nodding your head, or by pulling the wool over my eyes, by not answering questions honestly, it can make things quite difficult to be able to achieve the necessary results. I'd much rather someone said, look, I'm actually here for a quick fix. I just want to see you once. I can't afford 6 hours of support or 10 hours of support. And then fine, either we can come to some sort of agreement, or I'll pass them on to another sports psychologist or someone else who is willing to help them in such a quick period of time. So on that score about quick fix solutions, I'm actually going to share something that happened to me last week, which is a little bit crazy. So I was approached by a gentleman who had the full swing yips. So for anybody who's not too aware about the full swing yips, basically this guy had some very jerky movements in his backswing and his downswing, and he really struggled to hit the golf ball. And I've got to say, this to me is very, very complex, and it could take an awful lot of time. So I suggested we met up so I could actually see him in action. And from there, I put a plan together, and we would gauge whether we would go ahead and do some work together. And miraculously, in one session, in about 45 minutes on the golf course, this guy has a 7-iron in his hand, and believe it or not, he had a hole in one. Yes, he swung the club back smoothly, swung it through, and the ball went into the hole, much to my amazement and his amazement too. He was pretty speechless, whereas I was laughing my head off. So although, yes, I'm saying quick fixes don't happen very often, in this case, it did, or at least it did that day. Obviously, he went away happy. He hit a number of other shots as well nicely. He was striking the ball well, and he was swinging smoothly. But as I said to him, the reality is when you get on the golf course, when you next play, the wind might be blowing really hard in your face, or a crosswind. You might get some bad bounces. You might have a 3-putt. The golfing gods might make it tough for you. They generally do when you think you've got it sussed out. So there's a good chance that this gentleman will be back, and we'll be putting in practice now a big support pack to be able to help him overcome this challenge. And because of all of these challenges that golf throws at you and the way it tests your personality, that is a big reason of why I say it is going to take weeks or months to really move you forward with the mental side. So at least I can make myself redundant, knowing that I have shared with you some very helpful tools. Now, when we think again about golfers and maybe why they don't choose to work with a sports psychologist, it is scary, isn't it? Thinking about it, somebody messing with your head. That's often what people say to me. But actually, it's not that way at all. As I've mentioned, certainly for myself, I'm quite personable, quite relaxed. And I mentioned earlier, I feel like you actually do have the solutions inside. You just need somebody to help you change perception, become more self-aware, because we all have blind spots. We all can't see everything. So I'm just trying to nudge you in the right direction there. It doesn't have to be scary. But then when we talk about fear and being scared, it's actually quite difficult sometimes to be honest with ourselves. Many golfers prefer to spend, say, £500 on a new driver in the hope that that's going to fix the solution. And coaches would vouch for that too. A lot of coaches don't necessarily get the business that they should get as well, because a golfer's happy to spend that money in the golf shop. But actually, whether it's a golf coach or the psychologist, is that driver going to help you in the long term? Probably not. It's going to give you a nice instant gratification. You're going to feel pretty good when you whack it that first time down the middle. But we're creatures of habit. Bad habits will creep in and you'll revert back to type. Then you've got the golfer who thinks actually paying the fees with a psychologist, well, it's a bit risky there. After all, is there anything tangible going to be there at the end of it? They're not going to be able to show me how to crisply strike the 7-iron or hole more putts. Or that's what they think anyway. But I'd beg to differ on that score. It is possible for us to help you strike that 7-iron more crisply, for you to hole more putts under pressure. So, yeah, working with myself or any sports psychologist for that matter is deeply personal. It is challenging. And as I've alluded to in previous podcasts, learning orientation, which is a part of mental toughness, that ability to be honest with yourself and reflect on what you currently do, and then take a punt and make some changes, that is quite frightening. Thinking about changing the way you practice. But is it really? Is it really frightening just to adapt the way you practice? To warm up a little bit differently? To spend some time between shots admiring the scenery, or relaxing in a different way to the way you do? Or perhaps afterwards, when you're in your own heads, being really, really critical, you just changing the way you assess your performance and seeking some guidance on those things. Is it really scary? I'm not so sure. So Professor Peter Clough and his colleagues have done a vast amount of research, and there's an argument to say there that mental toughness accounts for up to 25% variation in performance. So by helping the golfer make some of these subtle changes, I do believe that we, as sports psychologists, can make a big impact. You know what? What would a 10% gain in performance mean to you? Would you see more trophies, lower scores, some more money in your pocket? What would it mean to you? A 10% gain. Give that a little bit of thought. I truly believe that this thing about learning orientation and learning from your mistakes, it is a skill that you can develop. And if you do develop it, it's going to mean that you can leap through some glass ceilings, that some of these performance plateaus can be pushed to one side. Sadly, I do see many golfers, athletes in general, and coaches for that matter, who do struggle with this, taking a step back, looking themselves in the mirror, and then adapting their approaches. And that's the same in the world of business, education, and life in general. We all can struggle with this. Okay, so earlier at the very start, I did promise you a case study. So I want to just give you very quickly some further insights into what it is that you can expect from working with myself or a member of my team. What is it actually going to look like? So I'm going to go with the example of actually helping a golfer shoot really low scores. So somebody who was pretty comfortable with what they were doing, they were playing quite well, professional golfer. They were shooting 70s, 69s, 68s on a regular basis, but they wanted to go lower. they felt that a 64, 63 was doable. So what is it that we looked at? So the objectives essentially were to support the golfer, to make sure that he didn't get too far ahead of himself, to make him understand how to reflect and learn from mistakes, as I've mentioned earlier, to change the story in his head about going very low so that it wasn't a scary process. We helped him build on fast starts and then continue the positive momentum without becoming fearful. So helping him trust his skills and play fearlessly no matter what shot or situation he played, without being reckless. So the process in this case, we had the round of golf, and then we met 5 times over a 2-month period. And this involved some short game stuff, some time on the range, some time on a putting green. We did some Zoom strategy sessions. Even we spent time in different countries when he was on a golf course, and we did Zoom calls or WhatsApp calls that way. It was quite a flexible approach in that way. So we did the needs analysis where we built the rapport, and I dug deep into his golf and his sporting background, what his week looked like, his golfing goals, his lifestyle, support system, all the different challenges, as I mentioned before. I even had a conversation with his caddy on a number of occasions to make sure that all 3 of us were aligned. Spoke to his coach again. Having his coach on board was really, really important. We did some pre-shot routine drilling to help him under pressure. On the golf course, we did some pre-shot routine analysis and got his caddy involved in this whole decision-making process. Added to that, we did some visualization, a bit of golf hypnosis exercises to help him get into the zone and overcome some of these fears about going really low. Mindfulness and grounding exercises were used to help him stay present in the moment and to put his attention in his body. So when he caught himself thinking 2 or 3 holes ahead or 9 holes ahead, he brought himself back to the moment. And we changed that story he was telling himself about going low. One of the things we did to organize that was process goals. So in practice and in tournaments, he would set himself different goals during the course of the program. And the goals could have been to stay present by practicing these mindfulness or grounding exercises, which he would mark on a scorecard from the first hole through to the 18th hole. And we did it in practice too. We looked again at another process goal, which was linked to his pre-shot routine and really trusting that pre-shot routine, which again, he did on a hole-by-hole basis, on a scorecard. Very easy, but obviously it takes a lot of discipline. And he did so in practice as well, where he was looking at short putting and distance, longer putts too. And then gradually, as time went by, as we're working through all of these different tools and techniques there, he started becoming more and more comfortable, especially with the mindful aspect, the staying present and taking in the surroundings, placing his attention in his body. And it's amazing the amount of time you spend on the golf course. It's probably a good 3.5 hours plus at times where you aren't actually hitting a golf ball. And if you get playing partners who don't want to talk to you, these exercises are gold dust. And often nobody knows that you're doing them. And that's the great thing about it. So this was one of the outcomes, that he got more and more comfortable with this. He also became much more clear in his performance routines. So the pre-shot routines on the golf course and the before a round, the after a round. And he found visualization really, really helpful as well to relax him. And sure enough, this guy was a success story. Obviously, this is why I'm telling you all about it. He went on to shoot a couple of 63s and some 64s, won a couple of tournaments during the time we were working together. His bad rounds, the 73s, the 74s, they also improved as well into 71s, 70s. He felt that during these rounds, he was much easier and kinder to himself mentally. He was no longer drained after these tournaments. He was much able to concentrate better for longer periods. And more importantly, he was enjoying his golf and he had a smile on his face when he came home. He was a much better person to live with off the golf course. So I hope this summary of the way I work and the potential results there, the pitfalls, the difficulties people have in deciding whether sports psychology is for them. I really do hope it has helped you. And as I said earlier, mental toughness does account for up to 25% variation in performance. So just give that some thought again. If you can improve by 2%, 3%, 5%, what difference is that going to make to you? Give it some thought. And feel free, to get in touch with me via email if you want. It's info@sport-excellence.co.uk, or you can connect with me in the Sport Psychology Hub, and you can ask any questions to me directly if you wish. I'm always happy to chat about golf, about sports psychology. All I want is the best for people. I want to see more people out there playing with a smile on their faces, realizing their potential and having a good time. And on that note, have a great week ahead. And if you're up at the Open, that's right, if you're fortunate to be watching or playing, enjoy yourself too. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sport psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.